Hello, I'm Emily and I'm today's artist for the Artcore Takeover. As I said before, I'll be discussing today ideas behind my artwork, and I'll be showing you some examples and talking about some of my practice. So I'm from Manchester. I studied fine art at Loughborough University and I graduated last summer. Since then, they've offered a programme at the university where it's called the Artist Benevolent Fund, which is a scheme, a one-year scheme, which helps bridge the gap between academia and becoming a freelance artist or a professional artist. I'll be kind of talking more later about what I did in terms of I've been doing in terms of the Benevolent Fund. So as part of my degree, I did a placement at the Manufacturing Technology Centre. And there I was creating artworks to reflect the ethos of the company and kind of their manufacturing processes. And whilst I was there, they have something called the Metallurgy Lab, and part of what they do is look at metal under the microscope. And I started working closely with the engineers there, and I was working with a lot of images that were kind of revealing these different forms and shapes and pattern that is unseen to the kind of naked eye. And because the manner of the images were in black and white, I started to add my own colour to them, and I started to kind of realise, I suppose, the power of colour, of bringing an object or artwork to life. And also this body of work led me to become really interested in microscopic imagery. So this piece here behind me, this is probably, I think, 150 squares, and these are all based on individually of different microscopic images, so ranging from metals but also to different cells, like fat cells and that kind of thing. There's the Cell Image Library online, and they've got thousands of images, which I usually kind of draw from. Also last year, whilst I was at Loughborough, they allowed me to go into their labs there and look at some of the pebbles that I'd collected off a beach under the microscope, which I'd use some of those images as well to kind of inform my shapes and patterns. Yeah, this piece was done it's acrylic on foam board. And like I said, each one is individual images. So kind of moving on from my placement, I started to incorporate and trying to expand my form knowledge. So I was looking at a lot of different things, kind of like cacti and plants and different cells under the microscope and seeds, looking at lots of different, trying to broaden my form knowledge as much as possible. And what I do is, this is one of my sketchbooks, and I kind of work through the images. Sorry, I'll hold up so you can see. And kind of create these logs and documents of all the different forms. I then work from this to abstract them even further, and then these are what create the patterns. So let me have a look what I'm writing next. So from this body of work that I produced, I was getting a lot of feedback, such as kind of like, this makes me feel happy, or this makes me feel joyous, and this kind of made me ask the question, kind of what is joy, and how can we create artwork specifically to create positive emotion, and is it possible? So I then carried on with my research, and I came across this artist who has really inspired a lot of the work that I've done, but also allowed me to kind of contextualise the work that I was doing. And she is a designer, and she has looked into the aesthetics of joy, and she did a massive project involving a lot of people, asking them what brought them joy, and a lot of people was kind of saying the same things over again. So, say rainbows and lollipops and sunny days and bubbles. So she kind of compiled all these things and then came up with this idea of 10 aesthetics that would make something universally joyful. So they they were energy, abundance, freedom, harmony, play, and it continues on. So a couple of examples in more detail would be like the abundance aesthetic, and it's the idea that evolution has kind of taught us that scarcity is dangerous and abundance means survival. The same with energy. Energy in terms of colour, kind of this idea that bright colours kind of are suggestive of nourishment and growth, and renewal. So taking these aesthetics, it kind of made me enable me to understand my work more, and it's really inspired me in terms of creating new bodies of work and how I can think about how I can create an artwork to create joy. So this sculpture behind me was from my degree show, which would be last summer now, and it's made from I make the frame, the armature, the metal armature, and then it's made by dipping plaster into scrim and layering that up, and then having a thick plaster coating over the top. Each one is then hand painted and hand decorated. As you can tell, like none of my forms usually involve spikes or sharp objects, because that's usually kind of instills ideas of danger, and I want the form to be completely organic and biomorphic and free flowing, so that the kind of the viewer feels subconsciously feelings of uplift and safety and security. This sat amongst I think it was six in total, and they all had their own kind of plinth where the pattern merged into the base, and it was this idea of play that was within my work, because there is a large element of play that I kind of in my process, but also in the way in which I display things. It was part of an immersive installation, so you could walk through the space and be fully immersed in kind of colour and pattern. These are some of the examples of works that were on the walls there. So this is just a wood with acrylic painting, and I don't know if you can see the detail a bit more there. And I always have like these elements of pattern within my work. So from a distance it would appear one way, but when up close there's kind of a deeper element of pattern revealed. And I think this relationship again with playing with perspective that's really important within my work. Just another example. So this one you can see I've used kind of a wooden relief on, so these are attached just to play again with perspective. And up close you can kind of see the detail. And this is again MDF with just painted acrylic, and these were kind of drilled just into the wall and were placed next to my sculptures. So since graduating, I have started. Became on the Artist Benevolent Fund scheme. So this was a new thing that Loughborough are doing, and it's basically helping artists to become a professional artist. So I've been allowed to return back to the studios, which has been great because I can be alongside artists, but also it's enabled me to kind of look at all the different, use all the different facilities. So I'm specialising a lot this year in ceramics, so I can use all the kilns and all the messy working spaces, all the different places within the studios, and I have been a lot of my work. Is in the studio at the moment, just because obviously I'm having to work from home. So these are the odds bits that I brought back from the studios that have made it into my house, and also some of the outcasts, which are just kind of samples that I couldn't let go of, but were kind of lingering around. So for people that don't know the process of ceramics, you first kind of make your object. So I've been making functional things as well to be alongside my sculptural works. So these are just this is just a hand thrown vase, and this is just a little test tile. You can see there's different clays. So this one's a sandy colour, it's a coarser grain, and this one's a white finer grain. So you first make the art piece, and then you let it dry, and then it's bisque fired, so all the kind of the water is no longer chemically bonded. This is when it's in the bisque stage, and then this is when you can decorate it with the glaze. So this is an example of a glazed piece. You can see it's just got a few cracks in, and that's just from where a bit of dust has probably got in the glaze and it's just cracked in the firing. So yeah, you can apply the glaze with different techniques. I use hand painting and dipping, but you can use different tools as well. So yeah, once it's been fired with bisque, it's glazed, and then it's fired again, and then you have your kind of finished piece. This one's slightly different. This one is, can you see that there's quite a lot of texture on that? This is a slip, so this is wet clay mixed with a pigment. And you apply that when the clay's still wet. So this has been, I mixed these up myself, and then I applied them when the clay is still very wet, and then it's fired, and then you can apply another glaze on top to make it a bit shiny. A couple of examples of the final product once it's glazed. Oops, sorry. So that's another vase, and I like to do the contrasting colour in the centre. Another one. So those are just a few examples of kind of the glazes that I've been experimenting with at the moment. If you want to have a look at more of the images of the kind of the organic and biomorphic body of work, which is more what I'm kind of working on, there's some pictures on my website which I'll put links at the end so you can find me. Yeah, so since COVID started to happen, I've moved back to, I've moved my studio space basically to where I live, and it's in the spare room at the moment. It's a bit of a mess, so this is why I'm in the kitchen with all the artwork. But I've been lucky enough to receive the commission for the Worcester Festival. So it's the Atmosphere Festival. It happens once a year in April, and it's just a one-day festival, but it focuses on the environment and kind of the world that we live in. For their requirements, they wanted the design to be something that was sustainably produced as well, and used recycled materials. So I proposed 3 sculptures that kind of used recycled wood for the base and the interior, and a paper mache outside, so then everything that I was using could be recycled. So that's what I've been working on at the moment, and it's been nice and sunny, so I've been working on it outside as well. This is, sorry, it's just a bit, here is one of the 3. So you can see I've covered that completely with paper mache, and that will be need a few more layers, and then it'll be ready to prime and paint, and then made fireproof as well, because it is for going in the festival. But hopefully, fingers crossed, the festival will be rescheduled for later in the year, and they will be seen at the festival. Another project that I'm working on at the moment is Hett's Home Art. So it's a new project that I've started within the last week, and I've been kind of creating, hopefully trying to create daily drawings anyway, so that people can kind of complete them at home in their own environments. They can print them off, or they can open them on the iPad and use them on the iPad. Just show you a couple of examples. So this is just a fine liner drawing. I'll put links to the page in case you have children that you know, or would like to complete the images yourself. I'm also trying to get other artists involved. Just show you a couple more. Yeah, so there's a couple more other artists that are on the page that have contributed drawings. So yeah, if you would like to be involved, then please feel free to message me, and I'd enjoy having your drawings on there as well. This is just another shoal of fish that I've done, and I painted this one. It was a crazy hat lady, and that's just finished with watercolour painting. But like I said, everything will be online, so you can kind of access it yourselves. So is there any questions that anybody has? Let me have a look. Who's worked creative from home since the lockdown and not being able to just go and yeah. So right, in answer to your question, about being creative at home, it is kind of what I've found most difficult is really working in isolation. I think if you are an artist, then you realise that you kind of bounce off ideas with each other when you're in the studio. So you can't just I do miss that just going next door and saying, oh, what do you think about this? Or and especially for me at Loughborough, I've required a lot of kind of technical help. So to not have the technicians and the facilities around me has been a real hit, to be honest, especially in terms of ceramics. Anyone that's a ceramicist knows the vast amount of equipment that you need, the kilns, all the other things that needed to make clay, even just the messy studio space. You can't really do that within your own home. So yeah, it's been quite difficult to be creative, but I think especially now it's opportunities like this, a lot of people have kind of turned to things online. A lot more people are creating opportunities for artists to become known through such things as artist takeovers, but also through competitions and kind of highlighting other people's artwork. So hopefully people will become more connected, I suppose, online. But yeah, it is a lot more difficult to be creative, and you get distracted a lot more, which is the downside. Too many cups of tea. Is there any more questions? Well, if anyone thinks of anything, then please just comment on below and I'll answer them later. So I think I've covered everything. For any more information about the works or the concepts behind my works, please just visit me online. I'll put links in the comments below. Thank you for everyone for listening. Tomorrow, Charlotte Cullen will be on to talk about her practice. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone stays home and stays safe.